Good morning. And today we are doing Judging by the Cover. We are going to go ahead and give this game a review based solely on the store page. Now, it is on early access on Steam, so I'm not certain that it would be available on any other platforms, but we're going to be looking at the Steam page for Grimshire this week. Now, my initial impressions, just from checking out the screenshot and the trailers, is the graphic style does look a little bit rough, I will say. Having become very accustomed to like Stardew Valley, Fields of Mystery, games like that have like a very clean look to them. The layouts and the maps and the characters do seem a little rougher, but that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. I will always herald that graphics are not the be all and end all when it comes to judging a game's quality. For all we know, it could be that the developers are cut on their budget or something, or cut on their time, or that maybe it is a deliberate choice with the kind of tone and setting that they are trying to go for their game. Now, I know I did just mention Stardew Valley and Fields of Mystria, and it does look like a farming game right along those lines, but with a very different tone to it. You play as an animal in a village of animals, so kind of Animal Crossing esque in a Stardew Valley type of farming setup where you are growing crops, you're preserving foods, but with some caveats where the trailer made it look like food spoils and that you are in fact on some form of a time limit that's why we're bringing this up on spooky month with October going on. So without going into too much delay here, let's dive into Grimshire's description. Now, it is an early access game, so we are going to bear that in mind because it is early access and things can always change and adapt and grow from these early access things. That's another reason why I'm not too concerned with the graphics the way they are currently. Like we can see here, it does look that they do very much set up where you have it on the grid layout. The animals do look unique. Like the livestock animals, they are unique. A lot of times these farming games, they just have your standard cows, chickens, sheeps, goats, all that kind of stuff. This game goes and seems to do what I noticed they did with Fae Farm and had the animals be more mythical looking, something to kind of fit into the whimsical setting. So we have this going on here. We have, it looks like you can play as different animals. We saw a fox, we saw a rabbit, and I think from the character creation screen, it looks like each race that you could play as actually does get different perks. Being, whether it's an herbivore or a carnivore, different foods will give them more of an energy or endurance boost, while also getting perks for different kinds of things, different harvests and all that. Like I saw the bears had a kind of thing where you harvest more out of flowers. Other ones might get more output out of whatever their equivalent of chickens is. We do see them decorating here. So, just like Stardew, you decorate your house, you got your dresser and everything. We do see the farm here with what looks like a water pump, but I'm guessing that is the sprinkler. We do see blue squares around the crops here, at least in the ones that don't blend into the crop. So it looks like that's the range of watering for what I presume is the sprinkler so that you get some automated watering for your crops. We do see some dialogue coming along here. The village is scared and confused. I don't know how we'll survive the winter. This is one of those things where we're getting into that darker tone where it seems like you, as the farmer, are probably tasked with a greater responsibility and for sustaining your village and making sure that you survive the winter along with whatever else is coming on along with the game's story. What are we going to do? Something bad is happening out there. That the description, we'll get into the description. They do mention that a plague is coming or that there's a plague going on. So with that happening, you have an even greater sense of urgency for getting things moving. We do see mining in here. I did see in the trailer, it looks like mining had you actually breaking through the rock and the walls. So we'll have to see, how much comes out of that. There is, of course, fishing. These things always got to have fishing. And it looks like a very simple UI. You got space to wiggle and then F and X, F to reel, X to cancel. as opposed to, I would think a mouse click or something, unless it is supposed to be an arrow key and ZXC kind of control scheme, depending on how they set up. Personally, I prefer using a controller. I got mine right here when I'm playing on PC. I do prefer a controller for these kinds of things. Sometimes the games do also have mouse controls, and sometimes you can use a controller and then use the mouse for a little bit of finesse on parts where it goes. So I'm hoping that the game has that kind of flexibility with the control scheme that I can just use a controller for that. We do see what looks like, I'm guessing that might be the energy or it might be the health bar. Hard to say. We have the crops here. Well, it looks like these crops are ringed with smaller sprinklers. We have another animal. We have fruit trees coming on. I'm guessing plums and cherries from the look of it. All these kinds of different crops. Now, the crops, they do look good. They look very textured, but I almost wonder if they put this could just be me having become so used to Stardew Valley, having played it for so long, and other games that take a very simplified and square tile approach to crops. Maybe this one, maybe they wanted it to be more. Maybe they wanted it to look more realistic in here. I don't know if realistic is the right word, but more textured, I guess. It's just a very different look to it. It does feel like it's a little bit of a disconnect from the character sprites, though. I feel like that might just be a personal thing that maybe it's just hitting my eyes wrong. Other people might think differently with the crops. This now the storeroom. This one I think does actually look really good with how it's laid out, how crops and produce are sitting on the tables. They do tell us on the screenshot fresh food stored here will spoil eventually. We won't make it through a real emergency without a good stockpile of preserved food. That sounds like something they would bring up in a little tutorial dialogue, which I'm sure this is probably from. Meaning you're going to be pickling things, you're going to be processing, salting. I did see that in the brief description on my cursory look that they do have a whole lot of that. The same way you have preserve jars and kegs in Stardew, the way you run the mill or cook things in Mystria, you do have to think about how you're going to preserve food. So it seems like the game is less about making money and more about building a stockpile. Honestly, that is a very interesting twist on the game. We got another setup here. It looks like now here we have the kegs. We have produce going into the kegs or the barrels, which is probably your preserving, whatever the preserving measure is. We got some fish out here. I'm hoping that these 21 hours is maybe like a drying rack for these and not a spoilage timer. That would be it would really put a damper on the thing. We do have the character looking like the. Oh, I see. It's the rabbit's face here, holding what looks like a jar of honey above them. Although that might be something else entirely. Hard to tell, really. I'm sure as people get to playing it, they're going to start to pick up more. But I do see what looks like different kinds of wood. The whole inventory layout here down in the bottom is very straightforward. Once you know what the icons are, twigs, logs, everything that you could want to process there. And they did have this scene right at the end of the trailer where they're starting a bonfire on top of a mountain. But considering that this scene popped up in the trailer, right after things were starting to look a little dark with the villagers almost at each other's throats. I'm almost wondering if this is going to be going in a Lord of the Flies direction with how some of the interpersonal relationships and struggles of their survival situation are eating away at them and their village and society. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, and I am curious to see how fleshed out this is in its early access already. We do see some more foraging going on up here with multiple characters. It's times like these make me remember nature. Beautiful nature is beautiful but heartless, a cycle of life and death. So they are hammering in the themes just in these screenshots alone, and we'll get back up there to the rest of it in a second as we look into the description. Now, about the game, you have barely escaped the chaos that consumed your hometown overnight. The friendly residents of Grimshire, an isolated mountain village, offer you a new home. Restore the cozy old farmhouse and tend the fields, but beware, the plague is coming. The community must work together if everyone is to survive. It does show us the little crop growth cycles here when it tells us feed them. Keep your root cellar stocked, balance the needs of both herbivores and carnivores. So, like we see with all the different species in the villagers, prevent food from rotting away by salting, pickling, drying, and smoking. Cultivate a field of crops and plant an orchard of fruit and nut trees. So you do have quite a bit to do to try and make sure that you are stocking up and preserving your goods to allow the village to survive. Hopefully you don't have to ration too much along the way, I'm guessing. You tame wild critters and raise them for a steady supply of eggs, meat, and milk. Now, that is something that is interesting that I don't see in a lot of these. So many of these farming games I see where you build your coop or your barn or whatever the fantasy equivalent is, and then you purchase the animals to house. Whereas here it says you're taming the wild animals to meet these needs of your community instead of buying them. You forage for seeds, flowers, herbs, nuts, roots, and berries. I'm almost wondering if you even buy seeds at all, or if you do have to actually go out and find things in order to plant them. And then you're working with your crops to preserve some and maybe use some of your crops to pull out seeds in order to continue and propagate your crop. Go fishing in nearby marshes, rivers, and lakes. So you have different biomes with to fish in, which will get you different fish. I am presuming that doesn't make sense to have you fishing in three different named locations and not give you different fish for each one. So you be a part of the community, gather materials, and construct village projects to strengthen the community. You donate specimens for research and discover new methods to increase the odds of survival. And you befriend the adorable villagers of Grimshire. But don't get too attached. It's possible that not everyone will survive. That right there, it sounds like they are delving into a permadeath mechanic where not only are you trying to keep everyone alive, you're building your stockpile, but you probably have to figure out like ration your goods. Maybe some people are going to get sick and have to quarantine and hope for the best, whereas otherwise they may go the way of the Oregon Trail and die of dysentery. That for people who aren't aware, that might be a very dated reference. And you explore the world, dive deep into the mines of Grimshire Valley, root out every vein of ore, experience beautiful shifting dynamic seasons and weather, and you decorate your home and farm with a variety of furniture, fences, pathing stones, and more. So it does have the decorative. Now, a lot of times with these kind of games, I go very minimalist in my decoration. I almost don't even pay attention to it at all. Anybody who's seen my Stardew and my Mystery of playthroughs, like that's how it goes. With Tiny Bookshop, I've been a lot more focused on the decorative, but that's because the decorations actually give you bonuses into your production. Whereas this one, on the other hand, it's very much they're giving it that very dark motif. There is a demo available. We can go ahead and download out of the library. That's free to start up, and it is $15, which for an indie game like this, cozy indie games, that is, I believe, a fair price that is not something to really turn up the nose at. A lot of times with the AAA games, I'm a lot more hesitant to buy it. And just because of the merit that I am working on other projects and do have limited time, I feel like $15 might not be what I go and spend on this, at least while it's in early access. I am adding it to my wish list to keep an eye on it because it does look pleasant, but it also adds a sense of urgency since you go in knowing that your home village is gone and the whatever plague or whatever was happening is going to be moving along and eventually coming to your new home. I do hope that as they continue on with their production, that the visuals will polish up a little bit. The character animations do look a little stiff, but the character designs, they are cute. They are distinct. You can tell what the animals are by looking at them, just kind of seeing their silhouettes, their outlines and stuff. They do stand out. They are distinct. We do see the storeroom being it's very central to the structure of the village, and I am hoping that the game can really deliver on its tone more than anything else. And I'm wondering if it is the kind of game. Now, most cozy games that I've seen, they can kind of go on forever. So, but if this game has certain endpoints or points where you can actually lose, like if the entire village gets wiped out, or depending on if the villagers, if they have kids and if the kids grow up to become new villagers, that would be an interesting thing to see play out in this, because it's more than just a farming game. It is a village survival game, which does kind of lend into the darker tones. Now, it might not be as dark and spooky as you would generally expect for, October, spooky month, horror, and all of that. But with the idea of a plague wiping out the town, it is just a completely different kind of vibe of pressure that you get from that kind of that existential dread that you probably get out of things like The Walking Dead or other zombie survival games, where it's less about run and gun survival and more about building your base and building your shelter. I think Fallout does a little bit of that theming too, where with how their villages have to be self-sustaining in the wake of brutal human disaster. With that, I think for the time being, I am going to rate this game a 6 out of 10. Now, whatever Metacritic scores are considered, good, bad, we're not going by those scales. I'm saying 6 out of 10. The visuals, the graphics do look a little inconsistent with the characters are vibrant, the characters stand out, but they seem to stand out a little too much from the kind of detail that goes into the plants. So I feel like either I would want to see the animals feel less grid and block sprite, or make the landscape and plants more block sprite like with how old 8-bit or 16-bit RPGs would have had their structures laid out. Harvest Moon is a great example where it's very cartoonized, like very cartoony, where the plants don't look overly realistic, but they are distinct and they fit the visual tone of the characters as well. This one, I just feel like the characters and the plants around them, it feels like two separate sets of graphics that is just kind of. It's a little jarring for me personally, but again, other people may disagree, and ultimately, the visual problem is kind of low on my bar for issues. The premise seems interesting. I do like the idea that there's a sense of urgency. They are clear about what they want their tone to be, along with the cute little animals. But, at the same time, the cute animals having the constant threat of death looming over them seems like a way to just kind of really hit you in the feels and hit you hard when you do lose one of those favorite characters that you grow to really like. And that might be a deterrent for some people, but personally, I think a game that might be able to make that kind of connection with you could be a very interesting experience. So, like I said, 6 out of 10 based on the kind of visual disconnect, but the game's premise looks really good. And with it being an early access, I feel like there's going to almost certainly only be room for it to grow and increase in my opinion of it. And if and when we get to a full version, I may be giving this another look to see what comes in there. I am not opposed to early access. I bought and played a good deal of Mystria, which is also on this YouTube channel. With that early access, I've just kind of hit a wall for what I can progress story wise without having to just, grind out a little bit of progression and decorating kind of thing. So I am kind of waiting for another update before I continue that one. So that's why I'm kind of holding off with this one, since I do have other projects on my plate. But this is a game, once it hits full version, if it's still $15 on final release, this is one that I would almost certainly be willing to pick up and probably do another series on with my first run and my first experience of it. So I'm hoping that we do see some improvements with the visuals, and I am really hoping that the game's tone and mechanics really feed into it. So I have high hopes for this, and I cannot wait to see how much more the developers are putting out with this.